Well, so the day was June 27th, 2018. It was a normal day. Just getting the boys ready to go to swimming lessons and hollering up the stairs for them to get their stuff so we could go.
And I was upstairs, and Trevor was downstairs, and he came up and said, "Mommy's head is exploding." I was like, she had water, and she was just texting on her phone, and all of a sudden, she just puts her head and slams it on the table and drops her phone, and I told my brother Spencer here, Mommy's head is exploding. He kinda didn't believe me. Then he went downstairs and he actually saw it. I'm happy that he's still here to be our mom.
That's pretty much all I felt was, what is this? And I've had bad headaches before, and this was like nothing I'd ever experienced.
It was exploding. I said, "Are you serious?" And she goes, "Yeah." I said, "I'll be over there shortly." It takes about 15, 20 minutes. I drove over. There was something in her voice that just sounded serious. Got there. She could talk, but was having trouble. Quickly, I called the ambulance. She could tell me her address, so she was that coherent. By the time the ambulance had got to us, she was on the floor. She couldn't talk anymore. She was screaming. They kept asking questions. I kept saying, "Why don't we get her to the hospital?" More and more questions, and finally they took her. We followed her to the hospital to see how things would go from there.
So I too went up and met him at the hospital, and that's where we were able to go back, and she just was not there. She wasn't present at all. She was awake and not making a sound, couldn't see me, couldn't see her boys, and that's when they told us that they suspected it was an aneurysm.
Figure out what the next step was as far as getting her to the hospital or getting her life flighted to the hospital downtown.
And it was at that point that the doctor on duty at Methodist Willowbrook had told us that she was going to be life flighted. It wasn't an option at that point. And so we all went down. She was in the helicopter, and we met her down at the hospital, and that's where they started running all the tests and figuring out what was going on. And that night we didn't get any news. It was just, she was in an induced coma. She was taken in an ambulance to Methodist Willowbrook, and then she was life flighted to Methodist downtown, the medical center, and Dr. Britz was the doctor on call and the one that did the surgery the next day. It wasn't until after the surgery that he came out and told us the part that was the hardest to hear, that if she doesn't wake up within 72 hours, that she only has a 30% chance to survive. So I think that was not something that we had any idea. We thought that if the surgery, the coil was put in place, that she was going to be fine. And so I think that was where we all sort of fell apart. But we made it through that day, and I went home that night, and the next morning I come up and I go into the ICU, and I can hear her screaming at one of the nurses. It was the best thing I had ever heard. So it was at that point that I think we knew that she was a survivor and that she was going to make it and everything was going to be fine.
It's hard not to look at life differently after having a near-death experience and being more grateful for the little things. And, when my kids are driving me crazy, I'm more grateful for the fact that I'm here to witness them driving me crazy, and you try not to let the little things bother you as much. It's weird that it's coming up on 3 years because it feels like a lifetime ago, but it also feels like yesterday. Once I slowly started to get back into doing things, it was just overwhelming. Every little task. I was having severe panic attacks and PTSD, just not knowing how it couldn't happen again, because when you go from being a healthy 37-year-old woman to nearly dying in front of your kids, I don't know how that wouldn't frighten you, that something else could happen at any time. Yeah. The big thing that I wanted to do was raise awareness, because almost anyone I told the story to knows somebody who's died of a brain aneurysm, if not more than one person. And most people don't know that if you have 2 or more brain aneurysms in your family, that you should be screened. I don't think very many people know that at all, and I feel like that is something that's critical, because if you have an aneurysm, it can be treated. It's not detrimental, or it's not a catastrophe unless it ruptures, and that's where the success rates are so low. The statistics are 1/3 of the people die instantly, 1/3 of the people die on the way to the hospital, and the remaining 1/3 that survive, most of them have permanent life-changing deficits. So again, I'm truly grateful that I got off so easy, and I feel like by giving back and being part of this foundation, that's part of why I survived.